7th. Order. I want to welcome everyone tonight. I'll briefly read the process we follow in consideration of each business item. It will be the process this evening to call for items on the agenda. The Commission will hear staff report first. First, open the public hearing and hear from those in favor and in opposition to the request. When you come to the podium, please clearly state your name and address for the record. After all interested parties have spoken, the public hearing will be closed. We will hear closing remarks and alternatives from the staff. That's the process. Okay. The first item of business is a specific use permit. It's a ZK Enterprises, DBA Ponca City Dispensary, requesting review and approval to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at property addressed at 2404 North Perkins Road in the Commercial Shopping District, CS District. Okay, I'd like to ask for staff to come. Well, there's staff.
Lance Gross with Development Services. Let's see, the first medical marijuana dispensary before you tonight is located north of Lakeview and west of Perkins. The black hatched mark on the map indicates the subject site. It's zoned CS Commercial Shopping, and CS zoning is surrounding the subject site. This is a plan view of the actual structure. It basically shows the layout. Only about 2/3 of the actual structure will be utilized for the dispensary. This is a street view looking to the west-northwest, and it's the former Get and Gallop location. The gas pumps are no longer there. Everything's been taken care of. And on the right side of the facade of the building, it says laundry, and that portion will not be utilized as the dispensary. Let's see, the findings are, Oklahoma state law allows for medical marijuana facilities. A dispensary is allowed in the CS with an SUP. Parking is sufficient. Signage is proposed. And the applicant has a state license. Any questions?
No questions. Thank you. Now we'll open the public hearing for this specific use permit to the public. I want to call anyone who would like to speak in favor of this item. Anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the item? Okay. Yes, sir. You come to the podium and name and address.
My name is Zach Kirby. I live at 290 Stardust Trail in Ponca City, Oklahoma. 290 Stardust Trail in Ponca City, Oklahoma.
Thank you.
And I'm applying for the permit, so obviously I'm in favor.
Any other comments other than that?
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer, but I don't have any comments.
Any questions from the commission? I don't believe so. All right, thank you.
My name is Todd Burley, 1914 Lake Road, Ponca City, Oklahoma. And I represent the ZK Enterprises and the Ponca City Dispensary. I just want to inform everybody, obviously the license has been obtained. We've also registered with the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics pursuant to statute, and that's all been taken care of. Mr. Kirby also operates the Ponca City Dispensary in Ponca City, Oklahoma, and since he was allowed to do that starting at the end of last year. It's been very successful, and it's very clean, very appropriate in the area that it's located, and probably the top one in Ponca City. And so just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. Any questions for this gentleman? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor of this item? Okay. Anyone would like to speak in opposition to it? There being none, I'd like to invite staff back to the podium. Do we have any questions for staff? Oh, I'm sorry. We need to close the public hearing.
And let's see, your alternatives are, you can recommend approval, you can recommend denial, you can recommend approval with conditions, or you can table to a certain date.
Okay, any questions for staff on that? Okay, I'd like to call for a motion for this item.
I move that we accept staff findings and recommend approval.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Okay, the vote is 3-0 in favor. All right, the motion passes. All right, the next item is a specific use permit, SUP 19-11, 135 Main, Main 135 LLC, DBA Flippin' Farms of Stillwater, requesting review and appraisal to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at a property addressed at 127 and 135 South Main Street in the Commercial General CG District. Staff?
Yes. The second medical marijuana dispensary before you tonight is, let's see, it's actually located east of Main Street and just north of Maple. There are 2 structures on this property, but only one will be utilized for the dispensary. The center structure is the structure that'll be utilized. And this is a street view looking to the straight to the east. And just like previously, Oklahoma state law allows for medical marijuana facilities. A dispensary is allowed in the CG with the SUP. Parking is sufficient. Signage is proposed, and the applicant has acquired a state license. Any questions?
There are no questions? Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing for this agenda item. Anyone wishing to speak in favor?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Corey Fisher of Flippin' Farms in Ponca City. I'm at 1300 North Pecan in Ponca City, Oklahoma, 74604. Thank you for hearing us tonight. If you guys have any questions for us, please feel free to ask. This will be our 4th location going in throughout the state of Oklahoma. Much like any of the rest of the folks that are doing this by the books, we've been approved through the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. We've also gone through OSBI background checks for all of us and all of our employees. The Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics has a very tight rein on us as well. We play everything by the books. This is a great opportunity not only for us, but for the city of Stillwater. So with any consideration, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask.
I don't believe we have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this item? Okay. Would anyone like to speak in opposition to the item? Seeing there are none, we'll close the public hearing. And staff?
Let's see, you can recommend approval, you can recommend denial, you can recommend approval with conditions, or you can table to a certain date.
Any questions? No questions. Okay, we need a motion.
I move that we accept the findings and recommend the city council approve the proposed specific use permit as presented.
Second?
Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. Passes 3-0.
Are you?
Okay.
Our names are, you notice our names are
I
odd.
know, right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You must be a Lane's and I. And you're Will Joy.
No, thank you. The next item, Sugar Leaf, specific use permit 19-12, requesting review and approval of specific use permit to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at a property addressed at 111 West Elm Avenue in the TS Transec zone of the Form-Based Code zoning district.
Yes.
All right.
Excuse me. Yes, the third application before you is located west of Main Street and just south of Elm. It's in the T5 zoning district. T5 is located also on the south, west, and technically the north as well. CG zoning is located along Main Street. And it's actually not the entire parcel, it's just the last structure. You can see the highlighted structure on the map that's on the left side. And it's the former Kate Crazy site. Parking is in the front and also at the rear of the property. The street view is looking to the southwest. And once again, Oklahoma state law allows for medical marijuana facilities. A dispensary is allowed in the T5 district with a SUP. Parking is sufficient. Signage is proposed, and the applicant has a state license. Any questions?
No questions, thank you. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for this agenda item and ask if anyone would like to speak in favor.
Good evening. My name is John Bartley, representing the applicant. Address is 623 South Lewis, Stillwater, Oklahoma. I believe the applicant has met all the requirements for the granting of this SUP, and I'm available for any questions.
No questions. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the item? Seeing none, would anyone like to speak in opposition to the item? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for this item and ask staff to present alternatives.
Let's see, once again, recommend approval, or you can recommend denial, or you can recommend approval with conditions, or you can table to a certain date.
No questions.
Okay.
Your motion?
I move that we accept the findings and recommend that the city council approve the proposed specific use permit as presented.
Second?
Okay, the motion passes 3-0. All right, the next item is a specific use permit, SUP 19-13, Main Street Dispensary LLC, requesting review and approval of a specific use permit to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at a property addressed as 807 North Main Street in the Commercial General CG District. Staff?
Yes. The last application before you is located just north of McElroy and on the east side of Main Street. It's currently zoned CG, Commercial General. CG is located to the east, west, and also to the south. Let's see, multifamily and two-family zoning is located to the north. The site plan shows the structure, and it's just the one structure that basically runs east and west, and you can see the parking spaces on the west side of the structure. And this is a street view looking to the east-northeast. And once again, Oklahoma state law allows for medical marijuana. A dispensary is allowed in the CG district with the SUP. Parking is sufficient. Signage is proposed, and the applicant has a state license. Any questions?
No questions? All right, thank you.
Yes.
We'll now open the public hearing for this item, and you would like to speak in favor of it?
I'm Jim McCullum. I live at 712 South Kings, and I'm here representing the property owner to answer any questions you might have about it.
No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this item? All right, seeing none, would anyone like to speak in opposition to it?
Hello. My name is Jim Brown. I live at 3815 North Eagle Creek. I own the property at 815 North Main, which is directly north. It's the residential apartments. They're next to the proposed dispensary. We're opposed to the placing of the dispensary, for one. In your questionnaire, you kind of ask how it's going to affect us. It affects us by, first of all, we have tenants with children, one with a preteen that lives about 40 feet from the front door of this proposed dispensary. Second, we have the property's been a warehouse since I've had the property for over 20 years. It's been a warehouse. There's only 3 parking spots. So if there's more than 3 customers, then they're parking in my parking lot, which is right next door, literally just a few feet. There's no sidewalks. There's an abundance of traffic there. We kind of refer to that main street as the Stillwater High School International Speedway, because at 8:30 in the morning, they're rolling through there. At 10:30, the ag students are rolling through there. And at 12:30, they're coming back from lunch. So you have all this traffic right there. That is extreme. The parking lot is extremely close to the intersection. And I just feel like it's a bad fit. We're already living in a community that's completely saturated with apartments and rental units. It makes it hard as a landowner to, I would ask, would you want to live next to it? And then you have these situations where tenants have a lot of options. So it makes it harder for me as a property owner to lease when I have something like this next door that's a controlled substance. So that's all I've got. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the commission? No, sir. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this item?
I'm Freeman Dillbeck at 104 East McElroy. I joined the property to the east of this, and like just said, it's a traffic hazard as far as the egress and egress on the McElroy and North Main, and the high school is up to the north of this, and it'll create a serious traffic part. I oppose the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing of this item.
And your alternatives are, you can recommend approval, you can recommend denial, you can recommend approval with conditions, or you can table to a certain date. Any questions?
Any questions?
I have a question. On the parking, with it having 3 parking spaces, is that correct, as he stated?
That is correct. And the code states, let's see, 1 parking space per 300 square feet of retail space.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is it considered to be adequate buffer between the proposed dispensary and the residences to the north?
Buffer as in distance or?
Distance, and there seems to be some concern about that kind of activity. I guess that's what I'm concerned.
Okay.
I understand buffer's kind of vague.
Yeah.
But what is determined that there is an adequate buffer in this kind of zoning next to residential?
Sure. The only regulation that regulates the placement of the dispensary is the 1,000-foot distance between a public or private school to a dispensary.
Correct.
So, from a standpoint of like a physical buffer, it's zoned CG, commercial general, and the property to the north is RTM, which is residential, 2-family, and multifamily. There's no set buffer requirement, so.
For those 2 zoning
Correct.
forms. Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, thank
Okay.
you. Do we have any discussion among the commission regarding this item?
I mean, we can, the conditions can be set if they're so inclined in that regard. I mean, it's possible that we could, a condition of some sort of fencing or something towards the north side, if only to keep a little bit between the 2. But otherwise,
We have the ability to do that.
no.
I didn't think so.
We can't establish that type of criteria. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
if that's the case.
That answers that.
All right.
The question at this point is if they can put any kind of conditions on the SUP application for this business, and I don't believe so, but I'll defer to you.
Thank you. My understanding of the state law is that the state is regulating all of the conditions, that the only thing any local jurisdictions that have zoning can regulate is what zoning district, in essence, that they go into.
And if it meets the criteria of that zoning district, then,
Correct.
okay. Any other questions for Paul? No. All right, thank you. Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion for this item?
Given that, I move to accept findings and recommend City Council approve the proposed specific use permit as presented.
Nice second.
Okay. Okay, the vote was 3-0 in that item. Okay, now we move on to the next item, and I'm not quite sure how we address this, but I think Paula has an idea about that.
Yes, I would be happy to. Paula Dennison, Assistant City Manager. What you have before you this evening is a request to amend the Land Development Code to add home sharing and residential short-term rental regulations for it. Give you just a tad of background. In April of this year, the City Council passed an ordinance related to the taxation, which is Chapter 39 of City Code, specifically dealing with hotel room tax. What it did was established this opportunity from a zoning standpoint for us to draft and propose where home sharing and short-term rentals go in the zoning districts, specifically the single-family and two-family residential districts, and if there are any additional requirements to be placed on them. So this is what the proposal is, that in RSL, which is the residential single-family large lot, RSS, the residential single-family small lot, and the RT, which is the residential two-family. So you have the single-family districts and the duplex, or the two-family district. We're proposing that to have home sharing, similar to Airbnb, that anyone that does that needs to obtain an annual license from the City of Stillwater, and that would be through the city clerk. It would expire September 30th of each year. It would need to be renewed if you want to continue that for the next 12-month period. We have included a proposed $10 fee for that renewal. They would have to have their state tax license so that the state would already be aware that they would be collecting hotel tax for that property. So that's item number one, the home sharing. Item number two is the residential short-term rental, and this also is in the RSL, RSS, and RT zoning districts only, not any of the other zoning districts are we proposing. For the short-term rental, we are also proposing, in addition to the license with the City of Stillwater, they also, before they obtain that license, they come through with a specific use permit through the Planning Commission and the City Council. The reason for that, the home sharing is where the owner is the occupant of the property and they are sharing their home, just like Airbnb. The short-term rental is more the renting out your home for periods of less than 30 days where you are not the owner-occupant of the property. So that is much more in line with a commercial use of that residential house, that residential property in those residential zoning districts. So the reason for requiring the specific use permit on that is that that commercial use of the property is more intense than what that structure in that zoning district is truly established for. You're adding the commercial into that residential. That is the initial proposal that we have. We would like to open it up for discussion this evening. One of the two things I have laid up on your desk in front of you this evening, we have had some correspondence from citizens throughout the community. Their main concern is all of the requirements of a specific use permit. And if that applies to this fairly simple use of how someone uses their home, either as owner or as absentee owner or a non-occupant owner. Right now, the specific use permit requirements, they have building elevations, they have drainage studies that are required. They have full site plans that are required to be submitted. So there's a lot of information currently that's required for just a standard specific use permit that staff does not believe is necessary on this, because this is going to be a use in an existing structure limited to the short-term rental in those three zoning districts. So I have included the correspondence from the concerned citizens for you. I've also included on the horseshoe in front of you the code section for specific use permits. And if y'all could pull that up right quickly, I'll let you know what my suggestion is in moving forward with this, and I would hope that y'all would consider it as part of your recommendation, whatever recommendation that is to the City Council. So the Attorney's Office and I have spoken about what parts of the specific use permit code that we have in existence would need to carry forward with these SUP applications. So if you'll see section 23-180C, where it references application, I believe item 1, the legal description. Item 2, a copy of any private or restrictive covenants. Item 3, the fee. And item 4D, location, arrangement, and dimension of off-street parking and loading spaces and access drives. That can be something as easy as taking an aerial view of the property and drawing on it, the applicant draws on it where, if any additional parking is needed to accommodate this use, where that parking would be accommodated on site. I do not believe that the drainage study, building elevations, zoning, because we'll be verifying that, it'll be verified on the application, dimension of buildings, I don't think any of that at all is going to apply to this SUP process unless, and here's the catch, unless the property owner is expanding what's currently existing on the property in order to accommodate this change of use. So if they're adding additional bedrooms so that they have more to rent, that would require more parking spaces. It may require a drainage study depending on the size of the addition they're adding. So that's very short in a nutshell, the proposal and the conversations that we have been having with some of our citizens. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Brad, do you have a question?
Is there any other process for the public hearing aspect that we have in our sort of portfolio that does not require a specific use permit? Because I think that the information part of notifying is the piece that grabs on the other. Without that, the specific use permit stuff doesn't really. I mean, we could put that all in what they need to turn in outside of that, but the real kick on that is the public information aspect, which I think people would want to know.
Correct.
But do we have any other alternative way of requiring them to have some sort of a public hearing of that doesn't require a specific use permit?
Not in our current codes, we do not. That would require a change to any of our land development codes in regards to this application specifically. We do have a little something similar that's already in our codes. We require neighborhood meetings for any applicant that is proposing a planned unit development. So they have to notify the property owners, and it's them notifying them directly, not providing the list of the owners within that distance to city staff and us notifying them of the public meetings. The applicant actually notifies the neighborhood or the adjoining property owners within that 300 feet of their proposal long before it goes to Planning Commission or City Council. That's the only thing similar that we have.
And that doesn't give them the way to say anything about it in that regard. And then in the other part of, with this sort of simple specific use permit idea, would that have to be encoded as a separate type of specific use permit where, we have the full A and then we have version B, or could it be where it says just like in this case, SUP matters accepting parts 1, 2, 3 or something like that?
That's the conversation that the attorney's office and I have had, is in the ordinance, once it gets through City Council, whatever your recommendation and their decision is, if there are accepts in there from the existing code requirements, that would be the place where it would be included as.
Has staff done any research what similar cities this size in the state have done to incorporate this type of oversight of this type of activity?
Yes, we have, and our proposal is similar to some, and it is light years less restrictive than others. Many of the communities in the state are addressing this item because it's becoming more and more prevalent that there is not only a large amount of lost revenue for the communities that have adopted the hotel tax in their communities, but there's also becoming a more prevalent commercial use of single-family, primarily residential properties, and that's becoming a concern.
Yeah, I know in ski towns in Colorado, this type of activity is swallowing up a lot of available housing stock, and it's become a high degree of concern. And I know, well, no, being a college town, our housing stock is limited anyway. Has there been expressed any concern in the community that this will further reduce owner-occupied housing, although part of the requirement is this must be owner-occupied residences? So I'm struggling with this because I really haven't had a lot of time to think about it.
No, there has not been a lot of communication back to staff of that specific concern. Since we are proposing the home sharing that does not have to have the SUP, that's the owner-occupied.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The non-owner occupied is the one that would require the SUP. And this does not affect long-term leases, anything over 30 days. So most of the rental houses around here, they would not be covered by this. They would still operate in the manner that they have. Apartment complexes, this will not affect them because they are not developed in these 3 zoning districts. What it will affect is, again, the single-family structures that are being used as the home sharing or the short-term rentals.
Is there a risk that that could impact the essential residential nature of a neighborhood? I know that's very speculative. I understand that. These are just things that I'm thinking about as I'm trying
Certainly.
to review this.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to go ahead and get it in front of the Planning Commission to have this discussion, to bring even just the limited number of concerns that have been voiced to us to y'all for discussion. To address, Mr. Chairman, your question, I don't see that this would have any more of a negative effect than what is occurring right now, completely unregulated.
Right. In essence, in many ways, is a way of formalizing activity that's already taking place.
Correct. That's yes. That is one outcome.
And it could, in a sense, a lot of the houses that have been rentals are sitting empty with a lot of the new apartments. Could, in a sense, fill those houses.
It could possibly, yes.
Or help to fill those houses.
Help to fill them, especially on this short-term rental opportunity here.
To me, it doesn't seem like it's going to change the integrity of a neighborhood. If anything, it seems to me that it would help some of the struggling neighborhoods that have empty homes sitting there.
I see all the way around on this one that, yes, it can fill some currently empty homes,
Possibly, yeah.
which need someone to be living in them and caring for them. But it also can identify those properties in neighborhoods that there may be a private restriction that prohibits it. And none of the adjacent property owners have had anything really to grasp onto,
Right.
to do anything about it. Or, if nothing else, it gives the neighborhood on the short-term rentals a place to come and voice their concerns before the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Any other questions or concerns to address to all? Okay, no.
No? Okay, thank you.
Very much. And we will open the public hearing for this item, and anyone wishing to speak in support of this item. All right, seeing none. In support of the, you want to come to the podium?
Oh, well, never done anything like this before, so I'm not sure what I need to do. I
Yeah,
have
name and address.
Jenny Pratt, 3520 West Willow Park Circle.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know for sure, absolutely 100% for sure, this is going on in my neighborhood, but I'm 99.9%. It's going on in a house, and it's affecting, what I worry about is the value of the properties. There are cars coming in and leaving, and they never stay very long. They bring different pets. You deal with the different barking and all issues with pets too. There's been a fire there. There's a school right across the street, and the principal actually called me one day and said, there's a fire at the house next door to you. And one of the people who happens to not know anything about the house is the only person there right now, so they don't know. So anyway, they put the fire out, and that at least notified, because the principal ran over there to see how serious the fire was going to be before the fire department got there. He couldn't let his buses out. And the person who was there evidently was a temporary renter who didn't know anything about the house, didn't know where if there was a fire, any way to put the fire out, where the hoses were, anything like that. Very unfamiliar with it. And that was a concern. But the parking, they park all in the grass or wherever they need to. And it just really doesn't seem like a neighborhood. The house isn't being taken care of, the lawn isn't, and this isn't one of your more expensive homes areas, but they're nice homes, and people have pride of ownership in those homes in our neighborhood. So I just didn't know if it was zoned commercially, because I thought it was a private residential neighborhood. So if it is zoned commercially, I don't know about it. And I don't know if there are restrictions for it. There should be some restrictions for it. There should be accountability somewhere in there for some of the taxes if they're drawing income. And like you say, if there's fire alarms or anything else. But I don't know. In Stillwater, they may be able to do this. I don't know. But that's why I'm here, because I don't know. I know that I've never dealt with this before, where I've seen so many different people. You just drive down the street and there's new cars all the time, in and out, in and out. And it's just very, I guess it's concerning to know for sure what all is going on there. So, that's my concern, is to see when I called the city, I said, is there anything that says how many people can rent a house? And are there limitations there? I don't know what that is. And the gentleman that I spoke to was very nice and said, why don't you come to one of the meetings and maybe you'll learn something too, because there is some of this going on. And they used the term Airbnb, and I didn't even know what that was, or Airbnb, something like that. I didn't even know what it was. I said, I just know that I thought I was moving into a single-family residential neighborhood. So that's really all. I just came to learn, to see what you can do, and if it is zoned, or if there's nothing I can do at all. That's
Okay,
really
thank
all.
you for your comments.
Mhm.
I don't think there is anyone wishing to speak in opposition, because I don't see anyone else out there. But is there? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Staff?
Yes, thank you. We do have some findings in here. Private homeowners are being able to share or rent out all or a portion of their home. Different varies of time, including the short-term rental. Text amendment is needed for any regulation, specifically in order to retain any residential character of a neighborhood. The only affected zoning districts, RSL, RSS, and RT, and permits would be required from the city to operate the home sharing or the short-term rental, and a state tax certification is also required. Those are our findings. The alternatives, you can recommend approval with any modifications. You can also table it if you would like to have additional conversations or public input. There is going to be a public hearing when this goes to the city council meeting, or you can find that this text amendment is not needed here in Stillwater. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any other questions or concerns address staff? I'm not quite sure this is the appropriate place to ask this question, but this activity is taking place.
Yes.
Anyway, and will continue to take place anyway, in all likelihood, regardless of what happens in regards to this text amendment.
Yes.
Again, I know that's speculative, but
And there's nothing that can be done to stop it from happening. Is that correct?
Not without serious redo of our current land regulations.
Right.
That's what it would take.
and again, this is a comment, and maybe you can comment upon it. Some of the issues that the speaker brought up, such as people going in and out, parking in the yard, seem to be some of the conditions we saw 18, 19, 20 years ago with rental units near the college.
With rental units in general, I think we see that everywhere, not just in the Westwood Overlay District. I think it's everywhere.
So I guess my comment is, I don't know that by moving this forward that we would see this would be a way of increasing or encouraging that type of activity to take place. I guess that's where I'm going with the logic process here.
To me, it doesn't seem like it's going to do anything to deter or increase the activity. All it's going to do is give the city the ability to tax it and have them renew it every year. Is that
And
correct?
have some regulation.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
Some regulation, and which will include knowing where these are, researching, simple Google search can identify which ones are being listed for either the home sharing or the short-term rental, and that would be an easy way for the city to check and make sure that those that are at least advertised do have the proper licensure
Right.
from the city.
Right.
So it would increase visibility because of you're formalizing, you have to get a license, a tax,
Absolutely,
et
yes.
cetera.
Yeah, I think, I kind of like the home sharing part of to separate the short-term rental, where these are people that own their home that are renting it out at a short period of time, and I think that the requirements they have they're nominal, really, at $10, and do you have fire alarms and things of that sort. I really, that doesn't cause me much consternation. I feel like it's on the residential short-term, that is, the people are not they are not primary residents. In that regard, we already have a thing of people that are not primary residents. People buy houses all the time to rent them out, and there are requirements for that, right? I mean, if I buy a house and I have students living there, they leases, and there's all sorts of requirements on those houses right now, I presume, right?
Not through the city of Stillwater.
Not through the city of Stillwater. So if that's the case, then I'd rather us tackle, then in a certain sense, from my perspective, then the home sharing part, fine, but the residential short-term rentals really relates to a broader issue, which is this issue of people buying homes and they have people, just like you talked about, people parking on the grass and all these other things. And I would rather see that handled in a single thing right there, right? If you're the owner and you live in it and you're going to rent it out short-term, I like this sort of home sharing piece. But really, residential short-term rentals are really just short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. They're not residential of any sort. The person doesn't live there. In which case, let's just make a rental have something in the policy for rentals, long or short, in which case you can handle this problem, people parking on the grass, people are blah, 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 blah. Now, there may not be consensus in the community to do that or not, but I think that's kind of what this is. This residential short-term is backing in essentially something like that, right? You're just saying 30 days or less, and if it's more than 30 days, you know, so in instance, if I rent them out for more than 30 days, I don't have to follow these requirements. And that doesn't seem like to be what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation, would be to recommend the home sharing part of it, and then recommend that they come back with something for rentals, short or long term, and come up with that. And it
Does
solves
it
the problem.
require the homeowner to, because I know you're not supposed to park on the grass, you're not supposed to have more than a certain number of vehicles per se in most areas, but with this, is that going to require the people who apply for this that are the owner, to put some type of regulation? Regulation's not really the word I'm wanting, but an ability to put restrictions on what those short-term renters can do and can't do?
From the standpoint of how the property is used, no. Because the purpose of the short-term rental is that less than 30-day of occupancy of the property. Might there be a requirement for additional parking? That would depend on the situation that's existing right now. The only place we do limit parking on the grass and the number of unrelateds is in the Westwood neighborhood overlay. Mm-hmm. The rest of the community is not regulated in that format.
So you can't put any regulations on it. Nothing more than what someone buys it for and rents it for long-term. It's really no different.
Pretty much the same thing, yes.
Okay.
Which is a whole nother conversation,
Which is what I was
Brad,
getting at.
that you had brought up,
You know,
of the long-term rentals.
Just have a larger number of different people coming in and out.
might make them all require the same things.
And, you know, long-term rentals, especially in college and university communities, is you have a group that is leasing the property as the occupants for that long term. Mm-hmm. And they have the responsibilities for mowing the yard and paying the utility bills and keeping it in some level, form of fashion. The short term is much more of a commercial use of the property because there is a direct financial benefit to the property owner for renting every weekend, every other week, to different persons.
Right.
It changes the dynamic, that long and short term.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, concerns? I direct to staff. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, at this point, do we ask staff to present alternatives to the commission? Sorry, didn't
That's
interrupt the
okay. No,
conversation.
no, that's quite all right. Alternatives, you can approve it as presented. You can approve it with modifications, send on to the city council. You can table it to a certain date to take additional input, direct staff to bring back further information to you, or you can recommend denial because it's not a proper amendment to our regulations for the city of Stillwater.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a motion, Brad?
Well, I would move that we accept the home sharing, what is it? I want to get the language right. Accept the home sharing findings and strike the residential short-term rental and approve that as such. Recommend for city council. Does that make sense, basically?
Legal, that makes sense. Okay. We have a second?
I second.
Okay, that particular motion passes 3-0.
Yes, I thought we'd do it as two separate, and now I propose that we recommend staff to come back with recommendations for short and long-term, for residential short-term rentals, more in accord with longer-term rentals as well. Come back with something that we can work with on that regard. That's not a very well-phrased motion, but that's the gist of it, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Now we have the meeting.
That was a motion, I think, right? So we'll have to have a second and then move on it.
An
Or is
amended
it?
motion.
I don't know.
If it was amended, I second his amendment.
No, it's just a separate motion. It was a separate motion, so we need a second on the second motion, which is
I second that.
request staff to do it.
Okay,
So-
we've had another motion and a second. We'll proceed to a vote.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And that motion passes 3-0.
That makes sense. All right.
Okay. The next item is the approval of the meeting summary for the meeting of April 16th.
I move that we accept the summary of the regular meeting of April 16th, 2019.
Second.
Okay, and that motion passes 3-0. Okay. All right. I don't believe we have any miscellaneous items from staff, planning commissioners, or city attorney. Nothing? Okay. The next planning commission meeting will be May 21st. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Second. Did I get you?
Okay. And the motion to adjourn is approved.
Yay.